Thanks for staying with us on Citizen Extra. We will be expecting a press briefing on the preparations for assumption of the office of county governors, and that will be coming to us from Cabinet Secretary Devolution and Planning Mwangi Kiunjuri. I'm joined in studio in this hour by Steve Gekonyo, who is a political strategist, and we're also with Javas Bigambo, governance analyst, and John Kagoshia, political analyst. Gentlemen, we continue with, we wind up on our earlier conversation on the 12th Parliament, the new faces that we're seeing there, and the scramble for positions. Steve, now that you're joining us in this hour, we know that Jubilee has a lion's share of seats in the incoming 12th Parliament. How is that likely to play out as we wind up this topic in terms of the scramble for respective positions and indeed nominations?
I think, in respect to those who've lost the election, we have to be sensitive to the fact that people are touched negatively, perhaps, by the outcome, just like in anything else. But I think for Jubilee, the outcome is positive, because now those things that they were not able to do or did with difficulty in the old Parliament and the old structure, they're now going to be able to pass through easily, or more readily than before. Again, because they have a majority in most areas.
Jarvis, on the same.
Well,
we're hearing, I mean, there's rumors on possible nominations. Just looking at the fact that Jubilee has the lion's share of seats, how are we likely to see the scramble for these positions?
Most of the time, as it has been practiced here in this our good country, is that these nomination slots are Thanksgiving slots. They reward loyalty. Well, that's at least a cosmetic term, but they reward sycophancy to a great extent. Individuals who are going to hop at the strings of the party's leadership, and that is why you'll find that all nominated individuals will always have to play along to the party's song, etc. Independent thought at most of the time does not work with them. But far from that, we are going to see individuals who have positioned themselves as most loyal now getting all these positions. There's a question of preference. When you look at the lists of party nomination as been presented by all these parties, the higher you are in that pecking order of nomination, then also demonstrates how close you are to the powers that be within that party, how loyal you are, how useful you are to the interests of that party. So it's actually not at the whims or wishes of the country or even members of those political parties, because registered members of those political parties were not consulted when those lists were being drawn. So basically, it is in the primary interest of the party leadership that certain individuals are picked or are given priority in nomination.
The beauty of the constitution that we have now is that it requires all political parties to generate the party lists ahead of time. In fact, they give a deadline by when those party lists must be submitted. And once that party list is submitted, the political party, of course, is really expected to submit them in order of priority, and of course with alternating genders. So the beauty of it is then that when it comes to the nomination process now, the IEBC stands guided, other than the kind of jostling that would see at the last minute, trying to have so and so get the nomination. So in this case, then we may not be having so much of this jostling, because then we are having a political party list already, and IEBC will actually follow that list in order of the priority that was submitted. But what we have seen is that people who are aggrieved or who are not okay with those political party lists went to court. And most of them have actually been given court orders on how then they're supposed to do them. And once that is done again, as per the court order, then we see it's going to be more automatic when it comes to picking of the members of who are going to be nominated. But we expect, of course, that more of the female gender might actually benefit more from these party lists. And of course, a few gentlemen may also benefit, depending on experience and how probably some of them who may have contributed very well in the 11th Parliament, they may also benefit from that.
And let's shift gears now to devolution. The State Department of Devolution is currently coordinating preparations of the procedure and ceremony for the assumption of the office of governor, this being the first time the country is experiencing a transition of leadership under the devolved system of government. To you, Steve, once again, and let's look at interesting counties such as Nairobi, where we know that, for instance, Kidero has been floored by Mike Sonko, and then looking at the incumbents such as Hassan Joho, for instance, in county number 1, still, assuming this position. In some counties, we see continuation of the work that was started, but like in a county such as Nairobi, in Bomet, for instance, where Joyce Laboso is the incoming, we now see a different plan in terms of governance and what these people ideally are bringing to the table. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, in my view, Nairobi should never have been a county. I think it should have been a district like they do in the United States, where it is Washington, D.C., because the government needs a seat. But nevertheless, we are where we are, and the Jubilee side has won Nairobi, and we expect a lot from Governor-elect Sonko in terms of cleanup, in terms of services, etc. There's a lot of good plans that were expressed by other candidates that can be incorporated. There are plans that have been in the county that have never been implemented. I think there's an opportunity now to implement those. I, of course, appreciate the fact that previous governors were the first under this new regime, and our current constitution, and there was a transitional period where you're trying to get a hold of what's what, understand what is required and how to do it and so on. So I think these new governors, or the ones that got a second term, will be able now to do things in a smoother environment. But in terms of Nairobi, the expectations are well known from the residents, and it will be interesting to see whether Sonko has the wherewithal to pull it off.
Expectations are high, Javas, and it was easy to chest thump when campaigns were ongoing and say, this is what I will do differently. But the challenge now lies in actually delivering, and the fact that, for instance, the incumbents have started off, and therefore they have a better platform in terms of delivering. Mike Sonko now coming into a field where there's been a lot of criticism regarding the governance of Nairobi County, regarding traffic and garbage collection and hawkers and what have you. But now the challenge for him to deliver, and not just him, but the incoming governors.
Well, after all the poetry and the lyrics of campaigns, now comes the prose of governance. And that's usually where the challenge is, because that's the point where the tire meets the tarmac. And most of them are going to find a bit of challenge. They realize that that which they had imagined should hopefully take place once they take office is a little bit different when it comes to matters, administrative functionalities that they need to embrace, and all the issues that come with it. But they are going, usually every election comes with its fair share of disruptions. We are going to see continuity is where incumbents retain their seats. But hopefully, going by the promises they made during the campaigns, they make a quick shift of gear to meet the aspirations of the people. However, now for those who are new entrants, of course, they are going to put in place their administrations and etc. Some of them had imagined maybe that the moment they get into office, they are going to sweep clean every other positions. Remember that there are those county staffers that are there on permanent and pensionable basis. For example, those who are employed by the county public service boards, they need to appreciate that those positions are secured, etc. The court has pronounced itself before on matters of these other positions, for example, CECs and all that, and whether they are going to be swept off, and the new governors coming in with their new team, of course, but it must not also be to the great disadvantage of those individuals. There's a provision in law already for that. Now, what you're going to see also is the excitement that comes with this. Getting individuals who makes the office run smoothly, the chief officers and all this for these governors. But what these individuals need to realize is that they are servants of the people. To make devolution work, when you look at the aspects of devolution, by the objects of devolution provided for in the Constitution, Article 174, and the physical nature, the administrative nature of devolution, then these individuals need to realize that the way it was premised in our constitution, that people need to be fully engaged, fully participate in making devolution work, whether it matters health. For example, let me just pick the component of health, for instance. In the past 4 years or so, there have been a bit of hiccups on how devolution should or is, works in matters of health. We've had doctors' strikes, nurses, etc. The matter that went through even up to the election time. I think we need to have the county government and national government working together, using the component of the summit that has been provided for in law, using the other component, the framework of the IBEC, and also exploiting further, as I'd quoted earlier, the Article 2, Sub-Article, Sub-Article 6, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution, and see how, for example, enhancing and spreading the wings of public-private partnerships and making sure also that the mutuality and the cooperation that has been anticipated by the Constitution is that which makes devolution work for the people. The jostling, the political egocentrism that has been there at play between the national and county government is something that has been hurting the success or the intended success of devolution. We need to see how we shift from that. The Council of Governors on its part needs actually now to flex its muscles more, rise to the higher ground, and it's done a very good job. They need to continue, especially through all these committees at the Council of Governors, whether it's the Committee on Tourism, Health, etc., all these committees. They need now to move strongly and swiftly through their leadership and those committee members to make sure that this time round, after the transition period, now devolution gets to be felt and to work properly for the people.
Criticism surrounding some of these devolved functions, such as health, Kagusha, like Javas pointed out there, in some counties where the incumbents had actually started projects surrounding certain areas and have now been cut short. For instance, in Meru, Peter Munya now having to step aside for Kiraito Murongi, assuming office where there are pending issues that the current incumbents were still working to actualize or bring to fruition.
As a country, we are lucky and very fortunate because these days we work on best governance practices, and these ones dictate that we work on plans and well-structured visions that, like for example, what we have in the Vision 2030, and this is something that guides the country towards a certain direction. Now, when the county governments came into place back in 2013, one of the things that they were meant to do, and indeed they did, all of them, was to generate what we were calling the CIPs, the County Integrated Plans. And these were supposed to kind of be a roadmap for the counties on which they are going to follow, and it was supposed to be their kind of medium-term plans and also long-term plans that they are supposed to implement in the county. And so you find that most of the governors, after being there for only about 4 years, of course, you know, they spent quite a bit of time during the transitional period. You remember we had the transitional authority, and so a lot of time was consumed during that period. So most of them may not have been able to actualize most of the projects that they had wanted to in totality or to completion. And so what we expect to see from the governors who come in now, they must obey and respect the CIPs that were signed, and they must look at the projects that have been left hanging. We can't have governors' projects. A governor cannot come in and say, I want to start my own fresh projects. I want to do my own project away from what was being done by the other governor. If a governor had already started a project, that project must be completed. And that is one of the things that we expect actually the voters to judge the governors that come in at this point when you come to 2022. Did you continue with the plans that were made by the previous governor? Did you actually actualize some of the projects that they had started? Because then we cannot have... What
if a governor does not agree with some of the modalities?
Once something was put in the county integrated plans and funds, public finances were committed to that project, But in that case, then as a governor, you have no option, because then we cannot experience what we used to have before in this country, what we used to call the white elephant. When a CEO came in an organization, they came and abandoned whatever was being done by the other CEO, and they did their own things, and then that became a white elephant. That is public resources wastage, and that cannot be tolerated. And I would also want to say, just before he takes the baton, that we have some of the functions of the county governments which we are trying to nationalize again after having devolved them. Things like, we have had a strike by the nurses for some time now. And when you listen to them, you hear them talking about negotiations that they did with the County Public Service Forum. And this County Public Forum is really not a legislative body, or is not a legislated body. It's not a body that we can quote in a court of law, because then this body is just a conglomeration of all the public service boards in different counties, and now they're trying to come together to make a service board which is at the national level. What I would wish is if we could be able to either legislate them so that then they can be sued, or they can sue, and even the COG itself, to me, is an amorphous body which has not yet gained any authority in law, in as far as I'm concerned, and we need to relook at that so that then we do not have some of these disputes overextending for a long period of time, because I think that's where we have had a problem. Look, when we had someone like in Bomet County, Isaac Ruto, having a negotiation with his doctors directly with the Public Service Board at Bomet County, then they did not go on strike, and they were able to work even when all these others had gone on strike. So it's important, either we relook at these bodies, or we nationalize some of those functions, or then we just allow the county service boards then to deal with the issues as they should be at the county level.
Javas, you were interjecting, the comeback by veterans and the new entrants, and now and how to assume roles and continue with the work that was not completed.
Now, first, when it comes to the county integrated development plans, these are official roadmaps or paths for development for the county government, where, guided by those plans, county governments channel their financing for projects, etc. Of course, it is expected that when county integrated development plans are developed, people are involved in terms of prioritization of those development projects. Most of the time, that doesn't happen. You realize that many times it's consultants who are picked just to develop all this, and then with various committees within the county. But we need to have full involvement of the people. However, you realize that also these county integrated development plans, abbreviated as CIDPs, they have a lifespan of 5 years. So it's expected that after every term, most of these CIDPs are discussed or redone by an administration that comes into office. But what we've got some missing links or some gaps that have existed in these CIDPs. One, the synchronization of the CIDPs with the Vision 2030, various pillars of the Vision 2030 of the nation has been missing. The counties must not divorce themselves from the general vision and aspiration of the country in terms of development. But much more than that, I would implore Senate in this period to possibly propose a piece of legislation that would guide on how, by the close of the term or just before the close of the term, we get to carry out an audit of the CIDPs. You realize that now, after the term that ended, when we headed to the elections, all these counties had CIDPs in place. We have not had a thorough external audit of the CIDPs. So the same way, for example, the Office of the Auditor General carries out or conducts an audit of financing or finances and expenditure at the county level via the provisions of the PFM Act. It will be very important to have a mechanism of carrying out an audit line by line of all those development projects provided in there to see, for example, what is the percentage of achievement or performance by the county on the basis of the provisions of the CIDP, and seeing, for example, when you look at the absorption rates of finances that are committed to development expenditure within a county, then there is a bit of a challenge, and the question arises, how come some counties are unable to absorb fully the finances committed to development projects, yet they have got a full and well thought out CIDP which has not been fully implemented. So some of this, a provision of audits would help to cure some of those gaps and anomalies.
And these are some of the questions I think that a lot of people are raising as regards development plans, which, like you say, the CIDP has a lifespan of 5 years. Steve, Karusha here is of the view that the Council of Governors is an amorphous body, and that perhaps this is the reason why, for instance, we as the electorate are not as well versed on issues surrounding the county integrated development plans. We do not know how much financing has actually gone into some of these development plans. We do not know the percentage of achievement. We do not know what is currently underway in our respective counties as regards development.
I think one of the, and I can understand why he feels that way, one of the problems we faced is that governors came in thinking they're little presidents of their respective counties. And then they formed the Council of Governors and continued to behave as if they were completely separate from the national government, which I think wasted a lot of time and also resources. We saw them not want to be held accountable by the Senate. I think when a new governor comes in, or a current governor gets re-elected, he has to review his priorities, again based on what the national plans are and ease of implementation and value for money. For example, we have some governors who are interested in starting, or rather having five stadiums in their county. What value does that add to the people? What is the utilization of such programs going to be versus markets, versus roads, etc.? Also, counties need to start looking at what is their value proposition, or what is it that they do best. Who is most likely to do better at fishing, for example? Is it a farmer or a fisherman in Kisumu, or is it a fisherman in Meru? And both are possible. So specialization, so that you bring in new money from activities that your locals are doing. So I'm for support of reviewing projects that are currently in place, and determining what is the best thing for your people. Of course, you expect that the county assemblies are speaking for the people, and that they're actually reviewing it on the basis of what's the plan for the country and what's the plan for the county in that respect. Again,
Jubilee, Jarvis getting majority, the lion's share of seats compared to NASA's 18, I think they have 25. The clash between the national and county government. Previously, of course, we've seen pending issues such as doctors' salaries, the nurses' strike as well, the clash between the national and county government, particularly with some of these devolved functions such as health, and the lack of a way forward there. And are we likely to see a more seamless way of operations between the county and national government now that the national government has majority of gubernatorial seats?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. In fact, I'm a little more worried still, because if we were to look at it with retrospect of the past period, the last term, you realize that most county assemblies, actually nearly all, underperformed grossly. Now, for instance, look at it this way. When it comes to the roles of the county assembly, these individuals also play the three critical tasks that members of the National Assembly also play. The issue of legislation, the issue of oversight, the issue of accountability. Nearly all these counties did not play exquisitely their roles of accountability, their roles of legislation. If you were to just do a spot check of how many pieces of legislation were passed by these county governments, then you would be left very disappointed. Now, also all the 47 counties, there is no county that stands out, county assembly that stood out, for example, after, for example, you know, the law provides that the county governor will always deliver a state of the county address. There is no county that stood out in matters, debating and picking out of flagging critical issues in the governor's debate that even caught the attention of the nation, or even caught the attention of the citizens or residents in that county. And it's because, of course, most members of the county assemblies in the past term, some of them actually were semi-literate, etc., and all that. We expect a bit of a difference this time round, because a number of professionals have been elected in various county assemblies, and one would advise that, of course, parties would have done this thinking earlier, that individuals who would be nominated to county assemblies would be individuals that would add value. The question of value adding in the roles of members of those parties to those county assemblies. But much more than that, when it comes to the aspect of the supremacy, political supremacy by way of the tyranny, then one wonders what would be the value that can be picked by the supremacy of numbers, or the majority of numbers, say, of the Jubilee Party, if these numbers would lead to the spiraling, or the quality, the value, the increase in pieces of legislation passed, good pieces of legislation that do not just amount to overtures of a political nature, then that would be seen as an advantage. and not a question also of this supremacy of numbers, say for example even at the national level, being used to the disadvantage of the entire nation, where outright despotism, outright dictatorship of parliament is then seen or is then witnessed. We want to see a more responsible parliament, for example, the use of this majority in a very responsible way to the greater benefit of the nation at the national level, and the greater benefit of the nation also at the county levels and various all these counties. Otherwise, if things continue in that drab manner, the humdrum way that it's been, where politics is played for politics' sake, then it's the ordinary citizens in this country who stand to lose.
Kagusha, what value can be drawn from the tyranny of numbers, seeing that Jubilee has majority of the governors?
Yeah, indeed, I would echo what Javas has said, that the majority of having this tyranny of numbers in parliament and also at the devolved government must reflect positively for the benefit of the people. I would say, for example, like what Adan Duale raised about having to do away with Ouko as a constitutional office holder. I think, for example, like that, of course, would be in bad taste. And I don't think that is where we want to start our new parliament from. I actually think maybe Duale is trying to try and ring-fence his position as a majority leader. And I'm not very sure that it is guaranteed that he must be the majority leader when it comes to this new parliament. Probably he may have to just defend his position. But how he started his 12th parliament address, I think is really in bad taste, and that is not what Kenyans want, and would all, of course, be very worried if the tyranny of numbers would be used in that way. It is not to say that there are no problems with Mr. Ouko as the Auditor General in Kenya. It's not to say that there are no problems, but again, you can't really raise that as a major issue to the country really when we're just coming from a very divisive election. That's something that I think he needed to have rethought. And now, again, the tyranny of numbers must be used for the benefit of Kenyans by and large.
Let's talk about the running mate factor. Okay, just as you wind up here.
But when it comes to the county governors, you have realized that most of the times the county governors talk in the same voice, whether they are in opposition or in government, because their push is always one: more resources allocated to them for the benefit of their people in the devolved units. So for them, really, do you find them having taking sides depending on which political side they belong to? Probably it only comes when they are electing a new chair of COG. Normally you see that the people, the side of political divide that has majority of governors takes the day. And again, you also find that the person then who becomes the chair of COG ends up being the loggerheads with the national government, because again, these are the people who keep pushing the national government to allocate more resources to the county governments. So for them at that level, it doesn't matter much, unless maybe there are real serious political issues, like we had Okoa Kenya referendum last time, and of course governors took position depending on their political divide, but rarely have we seen the issue of party being so important to the governors when it comes to running the counties.
Talking about deputy governors, the running mate factor and the fact that the role of the deputy governor has not been clearly defined. We've had deputy governors who've come here previously actually say that their roles are not clearly defined, and this, of course, looking at Nairobi County, for instance, we know that Igathe will be value adding, or at least that's what pundits have said. I don't know what you think, Javas. But the role of the deputy governor, Steve, and the fact that in the past regime their roles were not clearly defined.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see whether those roles actually become more clearly defined. I think the Nairobi ticket with Sonko and Igathe was a nice effort in terms of convincing people that that's the direction to go in. Sonko by himself admittedly said that he brought in Igathe so he can help him with the business/economic policy type issues. Igathe is well qualified in his right, and he has come into politics where he is going to go through his hard knocks. But the key of the deputy governor can be very useful to a governor, one, a governor who is secure in themselves. Two, a governor who understands that he can't necessarily do it all, or he or she can't necessarily do it all for himself or herself, and a governor who also assesses the capability of their deputy and sees whether they're trustworthy or have the capacity to do or carry out the policy of the governor. So when the governor knows how to deal with his deputy, then you'll see the benefits. Otherwise, it becomes just you know, as they call it, a flower girl.
Yes, a flower girl, Jarvis, and of course concern have gone into the fact that resources are being pumped into salaries of individuals that don't have a clearly defined work structure or work role.
Well, that is what we gave unto ourselves when we adopted the new Constitution 2010, and there is nothing really we can do about it. You see, the roles of the governor as an executive at the county level is well defined and well sheltered in the Constitution. When you look at the County Government Act 2012 as well, the roles of the governor or the executive at the county level, well defined. And you see, Sonko is a very smart politician. Actually, he would wink to Nairobians and said, you see, because I am Sonko, I will be handling the political issues, and then the policy issues will be handled by my running mate, who will be deputy governor then, in the name of Igathe, because he's this astute, this with fine dexterity that is brought in from the corporate world. What poetry, Lydia? What poetry? Because let me tell you one thing.
Yeah.
People do not, do a fact-finding check or mission of what the Constitution provides and what the county government provides.
But you must give it to him for being strategic in the sense that he at least therefore bought into his candidature.
And they were hoodwinked.
Yeah.
You see, they were hoodwinked. It was a red herring. And people fell for it. Because look at it this way. Whether it is in Kenya or any part of the world, even if you want to cite the United States of America, the president is the head of the executive. The vice president, for example, in the case of the US, plays roles assigned by the president. And you see, the thing is this, even at the county level here, and even at the national level, the deputy president at the national level is the principal advisor of the president. At the county level, the deputy governor is the principal advisor of the governor because they are a ticket. Now, they will have all the other advisors and the other roles. But I'll tell you this, and let's see how the years roll in. You'll realize one thing, that governors are going to stamp their feet on the ground because of the executive authority provided for them in law. Igathe will not raise his head and say, you see, you promised on the campaign trail. What does the letter and spirit of the law say? So the thing is this, these deputy governors, the Constitution and the laws that are there, the statutory provisions are very clear. You are a ticket, it's presumed that you work as one, because if they were to have very distinct duties and responsibilities, then because of power and aspirations of some deputy governors who wanted, and in fact some of them challenged their bosses in this election, because of that, they will not work seamlessly. They will pull in different directions. And that is why the prudence of the framers of the law, the statutory provision and the Constitution, had it such that you work together. Because it is presumed as well that when you are picking a certain individual to be your running mate, and now you're in office, and he or she is your deputy, that you would have a synchronized way of operation, that you would work seamlessly, going by the dictates of the law, but much more than that, the kind of work ethic that is also expected of the two of you. So, the moment deputy governors start claiming or calling that they want very different or clear responsibilities, then you realize that there's a bit of trouble. Of course, some of them are very bored, etc. In some county governments, in the past 4.5 years, some other governors did the other way around. They picked a certain docket department and gave it to the deputy governor. So the deputy governor would handle a particular department as they also continue handling other executive tasks of the county. And I think it would be prudent for governors to follow that path. You remember, for example, in the old constitution, you'd find under the former president, Daniel Arap Moi, you'd find that the vice president would again be, say, minister of ABCD, whether it was home affairs like it was in the past, etc. So when you give a deputy governor a docket, it keeps them busy and it gives them some tasks and responsibilities to discharge for the country.
Keeps them busy.
Actually,
you mean that a lot of them are idle?
Actually, he has finished it very well, and that is actually where I wanted to pick it up from. If, and this would be advice to the governors who may be listening or watching, that give your deputy governors a docket to run. Make them a CEC also in charge of a certain docket. For example, Igathe would do very well in planning.
Or trade.
You know, or trade. And then it will actually be combined. And in that way, you have proper utilization of a deputy governor in the office. Otherwise, if it's a deputy governor who just occupies the office and having a motorcade and a salary, then in that case, you're not helping the situation. And one can learn from how the president and the deputy president have run this country in the last 5 years. In a seamless way, in a way that they seem to have agreed very much. Of course, the president allowed the deputy president a lot of leeway, and in that way also the deputy president also respected his boss, and rarely will you see him belittling his boss at all. And again, we also have other very good examples. Look at how also Kidero ran the county of Nairobi with Mweke. They did it very well, and I think they were one harmonious team, and they did very well. So I think the governors are coming on board now. They have examples to learn from, and much more, as my friend here has said, Bigambo, that they need to give their deputy governors a docket to run with. Otherwise, looking at Nairobi, because you mentioned about Sonko, I think I like the way you are saying he has hoodwinked. I don't think people are hoodwinked. People are convinced, and they were convinced using reasons, and how he was able to present his that do, as you put it, Lillian. And if you look at what Sonko is doing, he has already started very interesting populist kind of pronouncements, which I think may go very well with the public in Nairobi. And they will have to pick the cue and have it implemented on the ground. He has already said that they were to spend 25 million for his inauguration as a governor, and he has said, now how can we spend 25 million shillings when our staff have gone without pay for the last 1 month? Now he has proposed that the 25 million be paid to the staff, and he will forego that inauguration ceremony. So you see, already he is picking on some very simple Magufuli-like pronouncements, which already are going to endear him so much to the staff and also to Nairobians. So really, I think with all his what one would call the drama and the shenanigans and all that, he seems to be picking things in the right way already. And
we now have the Cabinet Secretary, Devolution and Planning, Mwangi Kiunjuri, who will be giving a press briefing on the preparations for assumption of the Office of Governors. Let's listen in.
Governor-elect and members of the county assemblies who are waiting to be sworn in. Their success is a sure sign that the electorate has faith in them. As they prepare to take up their respective leadership races in the counties to deliver on their mandates and the promises they made to the Kenyan people, I have confidence that their commitment to deepen devolution to serve our people is strong. On our part, as the national government, we are determined to oversee a smooth transition of leadership and swearing in of all elected county leaders. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the judiciary, who has been very supportive in this process. As we speak, we already have a list of judges and magistrates assigned to preside over and witness the swearing in of the governor-elect in each county. As you are aware, this is the first time the country is experiencing a transition of leadership under the devolved system of government. We have therefore invited you here this morning to provide an update on status of the preparations of the assumption of office of governor, currently under the coordination of the State Department of Devolution, pursuant to the legal notice number 6409, dated 7th July 2017. All assumption of office committees we are constituted as required and have been in place and working since 19th of July with the support of the National Secretariat hosted at the State Department of Devolution. The Ministry of Devolution and Planning is represented on these committees as joint secretariats for coordination purposes. The judiciary was notified on time and has already provided a list of judges and magistrates assigned to preside over and witness the swearing of the governors-elect in each county. The Attorney General's Office has been informed of the preparations and is prepared to prioritize publication of Gazette notices. The first is to notify the public of the date, time, and place of the swearing-in ceremony of each governor-elect. B. And the second, setting the date of the first sitting of the county assembly, signed by the governor soon after the swearing-in. Following the conclusion of elections and declaration of governors-elect by presentation of a certificate of results, the following is a summary of the dates and venues of the swearing-in ceremonies for each county. Do you want me to read that, or I can give you a copy? Yeah? I read. In Mombasa, we have the governor-elect, that is Hassan Joho. Proposed date will be August 22nd, 2017 at Mama Gina Drive. Kwale, Salim Vuria, 21st of August 2017 at Kwale Baraza Park. In Kilifi, Amason Kingi, the same date, 21st of August 2017 at Karisa Maida Gardens. We have Tana River, Godana, the same date, Hora Stadium. And then we have all of them, like Isiro will be Mohammed Kuti. It will be at Isiro Stadium on 23rd August 2017. We have Ebu Martin Wabola, 18th of this month at Kadhanwa Primary School. No, at Ebu Stadium. I'm sorry. Martin Wabola will be 18th August 2017 at Ebu Stadium. So we have the 47 of them. I'll give you a list and the dates and where we expect them, the swearing to be carried on. All counties confirmed dates and places of swearing in by yesterday, that is 14th August 2017, and submitted the draft Gazette notices announcing the same for publication. The Cabinet Secretary, Principal Secretary, and Secretariat members will be making a tour of select counties starting Wednesday, August 2017, to ensure that all necessary preparations are completed as required. The Ministry has also prepared a package containing all the devolution laws and policies that will be presented to each governor during the swearing-in ceremony as a gesture of goodwill from the Cabinet Secretary on behalf of the national government. A similar package will be given to each clerk of the 47 assemblies for similar presentation to their respective speakers during the assembly's first sitting. Ladies and gentlemen, the message is we are all set to ensure a smooth transition. I thank my Principal Secretary, Mr. Michael Pawon, and his team for the work they and the committees at the county levels have put in to make this historic event a success. Finally, I invite all Kenyans to assemble at the venues of their respective counties to witness the proud moments that they have given birth to by their votes. Meanwhile, the Ministry will continue to provide regular updates on the planned ceremonies across the country. Again, I'll give you a list of the judges who are supposed to preside over these ceremonies. I've attached it here. So you have the dates, venue, and the governors, and at the same time you have the judges who preside over, judges and magistrates who preside over the ceremonies. Thank you very much. I think it's very clear.
My name is I'm going to inquire about the federal package for the governors, outgoing governors, and what is the criteria and what should be factored in. The second question is about Mandela. They are scheduled to do their swearing in on Thursday, that is on 17th. Your office notified the same.
Yes, you see, the legal notice is clear. What you have given is the final date, because you have set in the legal requirements. If the governor is ready for swearing in, even tomorrow, we shall go ahead and do it. It must be done within the time frame that you have given out. So that's the legal requirement. The date is set. But even if they are ready tomorrow, but first of all, we have to get the legal gazette notice. Yeah? When that is out, we already have it at the Attorney General's office, then they can go ahead and swear in. The package? Tuko na package? Ndugu yangu? Elizabeth?
The issue around the package for governors is not a subject of the swearing in. It is an administrative issue to be dealt with by the administration of the county government as soon as the necessary documentation is provided for the governor to be released. In the case of those that have been, in the case of those that are outgoing.
And if there is any package, it must be provided in law. Because by the end of the day, you see, if you have been contributing to a certain fund, and the law is clear, okay. What I'm saying is that if there is any question about any package to the governors, it can only be as provided by the law. Because if there are any contributions that they have been making, and which are supposed to mature by the expiry of their term, and they are entitled to that, then they will receive that. But they are not going to receive anything extra outside the law. We shall work within the confines of the law.
There are some activities. There are some who have been undergoing investigations either by the Senate committees and Auditor General. Some have not completed those processes and may be leaving office. What is the arrangement for that?
See, anybody who has questions to answer, he must continue answering those questions. The law is clear. They were not answering those questions as individuals. They were answering as governors responsible of their counties. If there is any allegation, corruption, or any other allegation, they must continue answering those questions. And the law must take its course. So there is nothing that stops the parliamentary committee going ahead to summon them. They will be summoned as the holders of that office, not as individuals.
Yesterday in Nairobi County had Sonko rejected 25 million that was set aside for the swearing in. Is that amount standard for every county, and is it provided by the Devolution Ministry or by the county government?
Every county was making its own preparations. Might be the committee that sat in and organized for that, might be to the feeling of the governor, Sonko, might be he would like to do it in a more simpler way. So each and every governor will decide on the expenditure. But what is what cannot be decided by the governor, what is constitutional mandate, for example, allowances that are set in by the regulations, then that must continue. But the governor can decide, I'll be sworn in my office and there is no ceremony. And that we have nothing to do with it.
Kutoka Milele FM. Kuna baadhi ya kaunti ambazo kuna wagombea ambao wamefunga, magavana ambao wametangaza. Sijui kama hilo linaweza kuzuia kuapishwa kwa wale ambao wamepita. Italingana
na obilao kotini. Kama unapingana, hujatosheka na uamuzi wa koti. Katiba yatuelezea vizuri na sheria iko ile ambayo tutatakiwa kufuata. Kama ombi lako kwa koti ni kwamba governor asikule kiapo na koti ikubaliane na wewe, pengine inaweza kuwa hautaweza kula kiapo. But kama hakuna ombi kama hiyo, ama katiba haijakubalia wewe kusimamisha hiyo ni mpango kuendelea mbele, basi mpango itaendelea mbele. Lakini ningeomba ndugu zangu hapa the legal officers watuelezee vizuri.
I think first of all, my being here, the president is the chair of the Intergovernmental Summit. the relations between the two levels of government, and that's the support we give. Yeah, the election petition for the president doesn't take office until it's concluded. That's not the case for governors or members of parliament or senators. They assume office unless a court says otherwise. But the president, the moment it is filed, that stops the president from taking office. And the time is limited. The time for the president's petition is limited. But the petition for governors and members of parliament and senators and members of county assemblies are the traditional petitions, where you file and the case is heard and the court determines whether you are holding that office or not. But in the meantime, those officers, state officers, take up office once they are lawfully elected. And that's why the swearing in will go on. So?
Already there are some counties that really handed a thorough visit to MCAs who are no longer coming back. Like I remember, I see a county like Nyeri where 35 MCAs were kicked out. Was an issue how some also similar issues. And these people had that mortgage and house allowance. How is the ministry going about to see that they recover these money that was owed to the public?
You know, for any allegement that was made, the allegement, there must have been issues attached on they are serving as MCAs, but at the same time there must have been guarantees. Yeah, there are those who guaranteed them, and there must have been the law must have been very clear on how you can attain those mortgages. So definitely they will have to pay the mortgages, or they'll be auctioned. There is no two way about it. You must pay. Even members of parliament, anybody holding those offices. I'm a cabinet minister. I have a mortgage that is running. If I'm no longer a minister, the banks could have foreseen that. So even at the local assemblies, any bank that was lending must have foreseen that this MCA one day can lose the seat, and they must have looked at a way on how they will pay. So it's upon the banks now to pursue them. I don't think they can't maintain the money. Any loan or mortgage that you take is attached to a certain bank, to a certain financial institution, and then they will be pursued by those institutions. Thank you very much. Hakuna swali ingine? Nini watu ya standard haki ya Mungu sina vita ya kupigana ingine. I have no energy to fight. Kwa hivyo tafadhalini, I have no intention of really pursuing this matter. But you know what you did on Sunday. You carried a story that I'm under investigation. I don't know where you got this story from. Unfortunately, you are respectable people, and any Kenyan expect you to behave responsibly. If it was even sir on all those other people or the citizen, that is the citizen. I mean, not the Nairobi Star. Yeah, even that is responsible. This is not a gutter place. That is not a gutter place. So what I'm requesting, I have no energy to fight. Tafadhalini, go withdraw that story. I don't intend to pursue in court. But if you don't withdraw, definitely you already have received my demand note letter. But I don't intend to go that way.
That's the Cabinet Secretary, Devolution and Planning, Mwangi Kiunjuri, who has just given a press briefing on the preparations for assumption of the Office of Governors. Just to recap what he said there, of course, after congratulating the 47 governors elected, he said that as regards the swearing in, they already have a list of judges and magistrates to swear in the governors. He also spoke about all assumption of office committees having been formed and the fact that there is a joint secretariat in place. He also spoke about the Attorney General having been notified to prioritize Gazette notices of notifying the public on dates and venues for the swearing in. He also said that governors are not going to receive anything extra from that which has been provided for them in the law. He also spoke about their packages having to be originated from the county government. He spoke about governors who are facing charges of misuse of funds, who will continue facing the same as holders of the office until indeed investigations are complete. He also said that each governor will decide on the amount to be used during the swearing in, and also spoke about the fact that governors will assume office even if there is a petition challenging their election, such as, for instance, the case in Embu and other counties. Gentlemen, as we conclude this conversation on the assumption of office, Steve, looking at the monies which have been set aside for the assumption of office, of course, Kagusha earlier had touched on the fact that for Mike Sonko, this was a very good move to reject that money, and indeed, I don't know if it was you, Kagusha, or Javas, to direct this funds instead to the payment of due salaries, unpaid salaries. So this money is going to go into the inauguration. It's going to be set aside to fuel cars, security, civil workers, for lunch, for public health and cleaning. And really looking at the counties, at the 47 counties, we know there are a lot of pending issues surrounding salaries. We still have nurses who are up in arms because they feel that indeed they have a case there as regards their salaries as well. So this assumption of office committee and the monies that have been set aside in different counties, you know, this money, isn't this wastage in your opinion? Don't you think that they should perhaps look into other ways of directing this money into pending issues?
I think there's a requirement in law that when you come to hold public office, you must be inaugurated. And to do so, you need a podium, you need sound systems, you need people to provide for catering, etc., etc. So I think it's a bit presumptive to assume that you can just move monies from one allocation to the other. It doesn't work that way. And the inauguration has to take place. However they find the money and so on is yet to be determined in the case of Nairobi. But I think that there are allocations that are already set for certain functions. People always ask the question, why haven't nurses been paid, yet we are spending so many billions on something else? It's because of how those allocations work. So it's a step in the right direction in terms of asking for the county to look at priorities, but it's yet to be seen whether you can actually move those monies in that way.
Javas, the interesting counties to watch, we know for instance in Machakos County, Dr. Alfred Mutua in his acceptance speech actually spoke about 2022, saying that this contest was essentially not between him and Wavinya, but more so between him and Kalonzo Musyoka. We also saw, for instance, in Bomet, Joyce Laboso speaking out and saying that the political rhetoric had taken over Isaac Ruto's development track record in that particular county. So for you, the interesting counties to look at in terms of leadership, and the fact that a lot of these current elects and the incumbents as well are eyeing 2022 for perhaps the bigger seat, which is the presidency.
Politicians will always be politicians, and that's why some of them will pursue populism with missionary zeal. And you'll single out, say, governors who have, going to distinguish themselves with such kind of paths as Dr. Alfred Mutua, etc. But seeing how, for example, governors who are in office played out the campaigns, how they expended, etc., the kind of financial muscle now that they have, and moving forward into the future, you realize that those governors that are very ambitious and will have executed their tasks and responsibilities to the satisfaction or at least impressive level of the people will have a higher chance of competing for the higher seat, which is the presidency. And that's now what even spells doom for old-time politicians like Kalonzo Musyoka, who now will have to struggle to battle it out with more robust, more ambitious, energetic politicians who have got now the track record of having been governorship for 2 terms, etc., and all that. And for him, say, having been in the court for 10 years, they will find a very difficult time to square it out with such individuals. And of course, the other thing that is actually very important is that we're going to see power plays in various counties. Governor Joho in Mombasa, who has pronounced himself on the ambition of rising or contesting the presidency, in the future. Hopefully, perhaps, as he says, maybe it's intended for 2022. Governor Mutua has been very clear on the 2022 issue. Well, the contest in Meru has been settled. But you remember that the outgoing governor, Munya, had said that he's going to contest the presidency in 2022. As to whether he will sustain that ambition, that remains a matter on his shoulders. And many other counties, of course, a couple of governors, a very good number of governors have retained their seats. Now, throughout this term, they will keep observers gazing as to whether they will want to cap their political careers with having served 2 terms as governors, or whether they may aspire to rise to higher levels at the national level and say contest for the seat of governor, etc. When it comes to the issue of the pronouncement, say, by Governor Sonko, who himself I know is another very ambitious politician, whether he'll want to defend his seat or run for another higher position, that remains entirely a matter on his laps. But the pronouncement, say, on the issue of redirecting finances meant for his inauguration to payment of salaries, etc. Question arises. We have got recurrent expenditure in the county, and salaries and the skilling within the human resource. So, if these monies are being directed to payment of salaries, those who have been working, where have they been drawing their salaries from? Unless maybe he meant that this money should be directed to pay other contractors who have got pending money. But remember that the moment a contract has been signed between a county and a contractor, there is money committed to that. So while that money perhaps some of it may be redirected to other things, very fundamental audit queries arise. And these are the kind of things that Kenyans should not just celebrate for the populism that is attached to it, for example, that this money now should settle this. The audit queries that arise are very fundamental and should not actually have individuals fail to scratch beyond the surface. We need individuals asking, those contractual agreements that exist, that various money has been committed to this, the county knew that that money is available, that's why that contract was signed. Where did that money go to? So that those contractors have not been paid, and now money should come from other quarters to pay those contractors. Those are critical audit queries.
Kagusha, your final comments as we close this topic?
I think just doing simple calculations, if every county was allocated on average 25 million shillings to conduct this particular inauguration ceremony, then we are looking at 1.1 billion Kenya shillings to do inauguration. And one, of course, has to ask themselves, is it worth it to commit so much money, even though this is provided by law that we do the inauguration ceremonies? Must we do them in such largesse that we are going to consume a whopping 1 billion shillings to just do those inauguration ceremonies? And at that point, I agree with Sonko. Maybe just to inform Javas here is that the reason why Sonko seems to favor the 25 million going towards the salaries of the staff is because the staff have actually been on strike for some time because of non-payment. So it's not an issue that is coming from now, it's an issue which is currently going on now. The staff have not been paid their salaries for one reason or another. So he says, why do this kind of inauguration when we have staff who are actually on strike? So I think maybe we may need to rethink the whole process, the whole issue. It is too expensive for us. Remember when Magufuli took over, and it's good to refer to him because he's an East African leader, he actually refused to use so colossal amount of money to do those kind of ceremonies. And I agree with Sonko absolutely. So let's probably tone down these ceremonies. Let's make them smaller so that then we don't devolve high costs to the counties, and so that then we can have more money available for development purposes in the counties. So I think that is the way we need to look at it. And of course, as you ask some of the interesting counties that we are going to be looking at during the inauguration, of course Mombasa will be one. One be interested to see if Governor Joho will continue with his hard-hitting rhetoric against the president, or now he will tone down and maybe be even more reconciliatory towards the government. One will also be looking at areas where the acceptance of the presidential result has also not been very clear as to whether they are going to be in a celebratory mood, whether they are going to accept even the election of the governors and such. So those are some of the areas that maybe that we may want to look at. Of course, Nairobi will also become an area to watch. How is it going to be? How small will it be? Will it still be glamorous even without having to use colossal amounts of money? But I think those are some of the areas that we'll be wanting to look at.
And Steve, your final comments for closing?
I think we are headed for a very exciting time. The President is going to demonstrate whether in fact he can bring good governance in all areas where he has a majority and influence the other areas where he doesn't. And also the governors have an opportunity to demonstrate that they can do a better job than the people they've just replaced. And therefore, it's exciting in that Kenya is headed for all factors are indicating that Kenya is headed for growth in every area. In the counties, there's opportunity to build homes, to attract professionals out of the city. There's roads to be done. There's so much development to be done. I think that presents a great opportunity for every Kenyan.
I thank you for your time, gentlemen. We're coming to the third and final hour on Citizen Extra. We're back with more to this short break. Stay with us.